You're speaking to the choir right now.
I know. You've described yourself as a constitutional conservative Democrat, unapologetically pro-life, Second Amendment, rule of law, small federal government.
Yeah, that's another point of contention now, not just with Democrats and Republicans, but with a lot of people. We have this thing in America called the Constitution. There are those like myself believe that it's a contract, which it is. It was signed, by people representing states, and it says what it says, and it means what it means. Well, just like any other contract we have in, whether in business or between people. There are the other people, which it baffles me. I do not understand it. Feel that it was a contract back then, but it's fluid and it can mean whatever you want it to mean. The concept does not exist in any other type of contract. And they call it, their term is a living document. Well, it's not a living document. It's a document that, I really truly believe this. We have 50 states now in the United States, and especially the first 13 states who were there at the beginning. How many of these 50 states would have signed that and joined the Union had they known then what they know now in terms of the Constitution, how it was going to be interpreted by the Supreme Court, and then also in terms of the federal overreach, and in terms of how the federal government is getting involved now with people's lives and then also states' rights. We had a civil war once already, which a large part of that war admittedly was over slavery, but there is another element that the war was over with the southern states. They were very upset over the federal government encroaching on states' rights. The federal government, the way it was set up, was that the states gave the federal government certain rights, and whatever rights that were not enumerated that the states were giving over to the federal government, it was not the federal government's job to get involved with those things. Well, since then, the federal government just starts doing stuff that they have no business doing. There's nothing in the Constitution that it wasn't set up. For example, the Board of Education. The education was left to the states. So why now does the federal government have a federal agency, education department? Makes no sense. And if people don't push back, the federal government keeps taking more and more power. There seems to be no end to it, and the Supreme Court, for whatever reason, isn't stopping it.
Looking from an outside perspective, the Constitution in America and the laws around that look like an iceberg with 100,000 tons of lead on top of it holding it down, and the Constitution is the top part of the iceberg, and this whole bit underneath of it is all this new law that comes into the last part of the Constitution where it says, you shall make the laws to protect this. And basically they've taken that clause and interpreted it as basically carte blanche to put any extra laws on there they want, even if it contradicts the other terms of the Constitution.
Well, that's another sore point also I have. Our government, if you're familiar with it, is set up with three branches of government. You have the executive branch. You have the legislative branch, which is Congress, which is set up to legislate, to make laws. You have it's made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate. We have the executive branch, which is the president, and that where they're supposed to execute the laws that the legislative branch sets up. And then we have the judicial branch, which is the courts and the judges, which is that's the third branch. Unfortunately, what's happening is, and what the last number of years, is the executive branch, which is supposed to execute the laws, now has lots of federal agencies that report to it, whether the IRS, whether the alphabet agency, the FBI, CIA, what have you, the FDA, all these other departments that make laws and regulations that we as citizens are supposed to abide by, but these laws were never passed by Congress. So if we're having somebody else other than the legislative branch pass laws, is Congress obsolete now? This is not the way it was set up initially. Why is Congress allowing laws to affect us go into place where they have no say in it. And right now we have the thing called the Second Amendment is being being pushed in front of people. You have those like Biden and Kamala Harris who want to restrict through executive actions or what have you. Where's Congress on this saying, sorry, you don't have the authority to do this? You can, or treaties like with Iran, that's supposed to come through legislative branch also through the Senate. And they say, well, it's not really a treaty. It's an agreement. It is what it is. It's between two countries.
Yeah.
And Congress does not step up and stop, whether it's Obama, whether it's Trump, and now whether it's Biden, say, sorry, you don't have the authority to do that. And now that, Biden wants this court packing, so he has more judges who, through judicial activism, ignore the Constitution and say, well, we don't care what the Constitution says. We'll do what we want. Sorry.